Good afternoon and welcome to the Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association Lunch and Learn webinar, Point of Sale Best Practices During COVID-19. I'm Adrian Card with Colorado State University Extension and board member of the Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. I'll be your host for today's webinar. Today we'll focus on helping you learn about strategies and approaches to help keep farm staff, other vendors, and customers safe and healthy at a variety of sales venues, based on recommendations sourced from public health authorities and businesses across the United States. CFVGA is the go-to resource for Colorado's fresh fruit and vegetable farmers. We connect Colorado growers with industry, government, academia, and consumers to strengthen and expand Colorado fresh fruit and vegetable production. Learn more at coloradoproduce.org and follow CFVGA on Facebook and Instagram. CFVGA would like to acknowledge its sponsors on the platinum level, John Deere and Western Growers. The gold level, Agfinity, American Ag Credit, Food Maven, and Cicada Farms. Silver sponsors include Aquatic Resources, Bijou Seeds, Certis, Colorado San Luis Valley Potatoes, Decade Products, D-Line, Box and Display, Dasani Farms, Fagerberg Produce, Go and Seed Company, Holler Seeds, King Supers, Landmark Packaging, Farm Credit of Southern Colorado, Hiracata Farms, Millburger Farms, and Monta Vista Co-op. Silver sponsors also including Nature Safe, NetFM, J&J Supply, Organics Supply, PSL Law Group, Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, Seedway, Strohauer Farms, Target, The Packer, TNT Packaging, Valley Irrigation of Greeley, Western Sayre, and Whole Foods. Learn more about these businesses that support the Colorado produce sector at coloradoproduce.org. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started here. You may have heard that some webinars have been disrupted on Zoom recently. If we have this happen, if we have a hacker enter the room, enter the webinar, I'll attempt to correct the issue as soon as possible, try to remove them. If I'm unable to do that, I'll quickly end the webinar and we'll do our best to reschedule. During the presentation, you can resize the Zoom window to fit your preferences on your monitor. And notice that at the bottom, as you mouse around, you'll find a button for Q&A. That's going to be your primary portal to interface with our presenters today. Type in your questions there and monitor questions too. You can see the questions that other people are asking. And additionally, at the very end, I'll conduct 2 polls with you to get feedback. And look for a pop-up window with those polls after I launch it. And of note, the polling is not visible in the recording. Today's recording will be posted to coloradoproduce.org/COVID-19. Our presenters today are Martha Sullins and Christy Dice from Colorado State University Extension. Martha works as the Front Range Regional Specialist in Food Systems and Business Management, and Christy works as the Extension Regional Specialist in Produce Safety. Both are leaders in the Colorado Produce Safety Collaborative. Christy, Martha, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to pass over a presentation to you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Let's get queued up here. Okay. Great. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As Adrian said, we're going to look at best practices at various sales venues as the season is getting started here. We'd like to just say a special thanks to Chelsea Didinger, who put together some of the graphics that you'll see during this presentation, particularly on glove and mask use, and also to Marissa Bunding for supporting this webinar series with her review and everything. So this is the third of 3 webinars, and so we've walked you through worker health, hygiene, cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting best practices. And now we're going to tie all of this together as we've, worked all the way up to points of sale. So this is where, the rubber hits the road, and we really want to make sure that as you are planning and probably already starting to, market your product at different sales venues, that you're really thinking about all the different practices and logistics that are going to be important as we're in this, in this period of having to be so vigilant about transmission of COVID-19. So we're going to do just a brief update on COVID-19. Then we're going to, all of the, as I said, logistics, sanitation program, product handling, how we interface with customers at various sales venues. And so that's going to include CSA pickup, drop-off sites, farmers market, farm stands, U-Pick, just other primarily direct-to-consumer sales venues where we've got a lot of interaction with customers and employees interacting with customers. We have a lot of resources to share with you, and we also want to spend some time answering your questions. If there are other things as we go through this webinar, if there are other either resources we can pull together or webinar ideas that you have, please just put those in the Q&A box. We'd really like to be able to follow this up with some additional support for you all, because we realize, this is a changing environment. We all need to respond really quickly to be successful and take advantage of opportunities and definitely overcome some of these challenges. So for those of you who sat in on the first two webinars, we did just want to talk a little bit about COVID-19, and the primary reason for doing this is really to ground us in what we need to be concerned about based on what we know, what science tells us, what our public health authorities tell us. And knowing that COVID-19 is a respiratory illness that's transmitted person to person is really important. It is, it's transmitted through respiratory droplets. So you'll see about the different precautionary measures as we talk about, strategies to use. It's all going to be based on the fact that it's proximity to an infected person, which we think is, a minimum 6 feet is really the minimum distance that we should be apart to prevent a lot of transmission, particularly from those large respiratory droplets. But those droplets, when they're expelled from the person who is a carrier of the virus, can be inhaled or can go into the noses, mouths, or perhaps eyes of people who are nearby, and then can, be, noses and mouths, and then can be inhaled into the lungs. And so, the key thing here to remember and to be able to talk to your customers about is it is a respiratory illness and not a foodborne illness. And so a lot of the recommendations that we're going to talk about in strategies are focused also, fundamentally on preventing foodborne illness, but COVID-19 is not a foodborne illness. And so we're going to have some additional strategies and practices that we layer on top that will help you be able to manage this context. An important thing that we learn more about every day is the fact that COVID-19 can be spread by people who are not showing any symptoms. And those people can fall into two different categories. People who are always asymptomatic, while they may be carrying the virus, but they never display any symptoms and they never get sick. CDC also has just mentioned that people who are in early onset of the disease also are carrying a high viral load compared to later when they start to really manifest symptoms. And so someone can be asymptomatic because they're never going to show symptoms. Some people can be asymptomatic at the time of early onset and then start to show symptoms. And so all of these things that we're going to talk about in terms of social distancing and face coverings and sanitation programs are going to be really important, because we just want to try to really limit the spread, limit transmission of COVID-19. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about transmission through surfaces. There's really been laboratory research that has shown that the virus can persist on different surfaces, hard surfaces, longer than on more porous surfaces. There's also been a lot of discussion about temperature and humidity being potential variables that can be controlled. And honestly, these are not the control mechanisms that you're going to look for. You're really going to look at cleaning and sanitation and possible disinfection as a way to deactivate coronavirus and this particular coronavirus on surfaces. We don't want to rely on untested potential control measures that we just aren't sure they work. What we do know is that the structure of coronaviruses makes them very, very susceptible to sanitizers, disinfectants. And so that's where we really want to focus on our surfaces, which includes hands. Another thing that I think is really important to mention, which I'm sure everybody knows, but we want to make sure in all of our messaging too, that, you know, any kind of sanitizing or disinfecting product is intended for external use on a surface and should never be used on a person, or, you know, on the hands or skin of a person, nor should it be ingested by them. There are other products that, you know, hand sanitize, but those kinds of chemical products were not made to be put on the skin or ingested by people. So, you know, this also, I think another thing that is really important to talk about is the fact that food or food packaging has been associated with transmission of COVID-19. So, you know, that's another reason why we're looking at these. We're looking at hand hygiene and social distancing and other measures that are really going to help us control the spread of COVID-19, make our customers feel really comfortable in these business transactions. There is a little here from Trevor Suslow, who talks about the importance of surface sanitation and conducting your routine hygiene practices, even though we're in this pandemic, that those are going to be your fundamental practices that you're going to need to follow. So again, you know, I think I've already touched on this, but it is really important to be thinking about, you know, you've kept your surfaces clean, including you've looked out for your worker health and hygiene, and, you know, now you're bringing that product to market. And so what's really going to be important is those surfaces at the point of sale, and so we'll talk about those, as well as helping customers and staff, you know, maintain appropriate distances and using other strategies to keep them safe too. So we put together a little shopping list for you. You know, this is really just to show you, you know, you need to think ahead to, you know, how you're going to position people at a point of sale, how you're going to direct them, how you're going to help them understand what their shopping experience is going to be like. You're going to need some supplies to make sure that's that you can do that successfully. A lot of pre-planning, of course, extra hygiene supplies, and even having extra people on hand. I know that can be a really heavy lift, but one thing that we are finding is that all of these measures take more time and take more people to execute. So some of the key practices that we're going to be talking about, you know, really involve first around, you know, communication. And so making sure that you can get in touch with both your customers as well as your suppliers, and letting people know really what it's going to be like. I mean, it's a friendly environment, of course, a friendly point of sale, but you also want to let people know that, you know, there may be some waiting and it may take a little bit longer for them to get through your farmers market booth, or, you know, for them to pick up their CSA box shares. So you also want to make sure that customers can get information ahead of time, so that it's not taking more time when they're there at that point of sale, point of pickup. All farmers markets are really going to be having different policies this year. There are some fundamental recommendations that have come out with the Colorado Farmers Market Association, working in coordination with the with public health, with Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. But markets might be influenced by their local public health authorities, and, you know, may have very different policies. And so if you're in multiple markets, just make sure you know what their policies are ahead of time, and what your booth placement and, you know, what they're going to be expecting of you. And then just lastly is making sure that your employees know too, and you do some training beforehand so that everything goes really smooth. Oops, got to get my slide here. Okay. So this kind of leads to thinking about logistics, and this might seem, you know, a little bit safety discussion, but taking that time to plan and think about of keeping surfaces clean and sanitized, making sure your workers can keep their hands clean, use masks and gloves if you're using gloves, It's all going to take longer. It's going to require those different supplies like we saw on that shopping list. And so it may take it may take a little bit longer. And so you want to plan ahead for that so that you can make sure that you're thorough. Some of the things that we've heard from other producers is, maybe you have a couple of lines if it's a CSA pickup so that you can, you have that little extra time with each customer who's coming up. And make sure, if it's a market or a pickup, make sure that you think about how you're going to manage a large group of people if they come. Do people know, where they're going to park, where they're going to put their bikes, where do they go once they arrive? And just make sure you have signage and messaging that makes that really clear. And I think, Christy, this is where I turn it over to you. So we have some signage here, and these are just some examples. You'll be able to download this from our website. And so, there are lots of different outlets that you can use to convey this. But I think it's just really important to have some real simple messaging that lets people know, you don't want them to come if they brought children, for example, if they maybe didn't bring kids, or if they bring kids, they know how they're going to behave in that environment. Maybe elderly individuals don't come because that's really part of our safer at home strategy right now. And so just, some basic signage that lets, that lets customers know what they should expect at the point of sale, and then they can be prepared to be good customers also. And again, back to that shopping list, you want to make sure you have a way to guide customers through that setup. And so, lots of different things that you can use, but you can certainly do like, a bank or a concert where you've got ropes and poles or markings that really help people know where they're supposed to go, so that they can walk through without having to get too close to other customers or your staff. Making sure that they know where they can pay and that there's a progression so that people aren't double. That allows them to maintain that physical distance. And then, making sure that you have adequate space for people to wait, so that, they can be safe. They're waiting, however you've set that up. Just again, a few things as you are planning for your, thinking about how you're going to organize that and make sure that your customers can move comfortably through it.
Martha, looks like Christy's ready.
Yep, I think so. Great.
And you guys, looks like we have a question. Why no pets? They do not transmit COVID.
And so that is a great question, and I'll just mention that. Hi, Sue. The only thing that managers have said is that they feel like it would cause people to kind of gather and pet and kind of dawdle. And so the goal has really been to move people less socializing at this time, when we know we might have a lot of people going through a market at any one time. And so if we're trying to keep people from kind of gathering, that would be that's the reason. There's no other reason. It's not a disease transmission. It was just more to kind of keep people moving. So only for that reason. It's a recommendation. So, Christy.
Great. Thank you, Martha. And thanks again to everybody who got on the webinar with us today. We're excited to have you, and hopefully you find this helpful. So as we've discussed previously, good hand hygiene is one of the most effective ways to prevent the spread of the virus. So you should plan to provide additional hand washing stations at your venue for both your staff and customers. And then be sure to put these hand washing stations in areas that are visible and easy to access for customers and employees. Martha mentioned earlier that the structure of the virus makes hand sanitizers especially effective at inactivating the virus. We still say that hand sanitizer should not replace hand washing, but during activities where the hands aren't visibly dirty, hand sanitizer can be used as an increased measure to reduce the chance of spreading that virus. So if you're going to use hand sanitizer, be sure that it is at least 60% isopropyl alcohol, and then you should apply it to your hands, get it all over your hands, and then rub them until they feel dry. And then finally, if you are going to use hand sanitizer as part of your practices, you want to make sure you would train your employees to wash their hands with soap and water as frequently as you possibly can, even though you're using that hand sanitizer. I'll discuss gloves in more detail in a couple of slides, but using gloves when in situations where hands are contacting surfaces that are not cleaned and sanitized can really help prevent those hands from becoming contaminated, but then also spreading that virus around. So think about using gloves, having your staff use gloves for activities, maybe taking payments or some other activities that, like I said, we'll discuss in a few slides. And then be prepared, because you're going to go through an increased amount of hand washing supplies, because you're going to have these additional hand washing stations, and you're going to ask people to wash their hands more frequently. So be sure to assign someone to check those stations and then restock them frequently. Next slide, Martha. So there's a lot of signage available to help you educate your customers about why hygiene is so important right now. On the left-hand side of the slide, there's the picture, the green picture. It's from CSU, and it's a poster about how hand washing really inactivates the virus, and it does a good job of describing that process. And so I really like that one. And so we provide the link there to download if you want to print that and post it somewhere. And then CDC also has a ton of fact sheets. I think this is a good one because it's a visual representation of how to stop the spread of germs. And they also have the CDC posters also available in different sizes for printing and multiple languages. So just good resources for educating your customers. Next slide. So even though we were all taught to wash our hands and how to wash our hands when we were children, most people still don't do it right. So you really want to make sure you post signage around your hand washing stations with pictures and instructions on appropriate hand washing techniques. On the left-hand side of the slide, we have a poster available from CSU that we've put out multiple times. It's not a new poster, it's something we've had for a while. It's available in English and Spanish. So again, you can print that and post it in those areas where your employees or your customers are doing that hand washing activity, just to reinforce those practices. And CDC also has another graphic that might work well at maybe a farmer's market or a more public venue, again, but with the same information. So be sure to get those resources printed for your use. Next slide. And so since we're suggesting you should increase the number of hand washing stations, we put together a list of some options that are available that wouldn't require you to rent additional units. You could purchase the supplies and make your own. The one on the left side is actually a complete sink that you could just purchase. I actually bought one and put it together so we can demo it for farmers. It was really easy to put together. It's durable. I think it'll be a really good option. And then, so that one's ideal because it's foot pedal operated, and so that's a really good feature of that one. And then in the middle, there's two options. So there's a link where you can download instructions where you purchase all the supplies and then you put it together yourself. And then also the University of Minnesota put together a document on how to build a hand washing station that would be field ready as well. The University of Minnesota one's less ideal because that one requires you to use your hand to turn the faucet on and off, but still certainly a good option. And then if you're just looking for parts, I found on Amazon that they have this sink parts that basically gives you everything you need to provide a stand and a catch basin and some additional things, but it provides a lot of the kind of inner workings of the hand washing sink. So we have that mailed for you. And so one thing to remember, or several things to remember when you're making a hand washing station that you should have, it should include a set number of items. And so you want to make sure you have water available that contains no generic E. coli. And so that's going to be your clean water source that you're going to use to wash your hands. You want to make sure you have soap. You want to have a container to catch that hand washing water. You don't want that just draining onto the ground or into some other area. You want to make sure you're catching that water and dispose of that properly. You want to include paper towels for drying the hands. You want to have a trash can with a lid and a liner. And then you also thinking about that turning the water on and off. So ideally you want to have some kind of foot pump operation for water dispensing rather than that faucet that's turned on with the hands. But the most important thing is washing hands. So if you have to have the one that you turn on with your hands, that's okay. You know, just really want to provide that hand washing station. Next slide. So when I put that hand washing station slide together, I noticed there weren't any trash cans pictured. So I wanted to highlight that trash cans are a key part of your hand washing station. During our farm visits, we've also seen that this is a common item that's missing from hand washing stations. And so we want to make sure we do remind everybody that it's important. So some things to keep in mind: make sure that the trash can has a lid or that it's enclosed in some way so that the trash isn't blowing out of the trash can. You want to have a liner so that way your employees don't need to reach down in there and pick out those dirty paper towels. You want to be able to just pull the bag out or the liner out and dispose of it that way. You know, a lot of times when we don't see hand washing stations, farmers have indicated it's because they blow away. So think about putting some rocks or sandbags in the bottom of them. Purchase one that you can do that, where you can put something in the bottom of it for weight. And then again, that hands-free open close is really your best option. So try and find an option that doesn't require you to pick the lid off of and put the lid back on. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk a little bit about employee health and hygiene. So it's really important to discuss with your employees that if they're not feeling well, they should stay home, and they should let their supervisor know that they're if they're exhibiting those symptoms of COVID-19. Over the weekend, I'm sure many of you heard, CDC updated the symptoms associated with COVID-19, and so we wanted to be sure we made you aware of this. So in addition to fever, cough, and shortness of breath that they've previously indicated, they now have given some more description of what those symptoms may entail. So chills, repeated shaking with chills, or muscle pain, that's a lot of times associated with a fever, and so they've added that as potential symptoms for COVID-19. Also headache, sore throat, or if you're not feeling well and unable to taste or smell as like a new thing, those things have all been added to that list of symptoms. And so because this has changed, it's really a great time to review these symptoms with your employees and be sure that they understand that if they are experiencing any of these symptoms, they should not come to work. Next slide, please. So if you did end up having an employee who came to work while exhibiting any of those symptoms, you need to send them home immediately. You don't want to, assign them to a task where they're away from people. You really just want to have them go home and get better. Hopefully you will have caught this before they began working, but if that didn't happen, then you'll need to clean and disinfect any surfaces in their workspace or anything that they may have come into contact with. You should also determine that if they came into close contact with anyone else at your operation, and if they did, then you should make sure to record that information and contact your local health department. And we say to contact your local health department because some local health departments are handling these situations differently, and we want to be sure that you're following their recommendations. So that's why we recommend that you reach out to them if you do have other employees who are exposed to somebody who's exhibiting those symptoms. Next slide, please. So as part of your health and hygiene training, you should include training on practices to help prevent the spread of the virus. So reminding your employees not to touch their eyes, nose, mouth, or any other part of their face. And if they do, make sure that they wash their hands. You should also provide an actual hand washing training, show your employees the entire process you want them to follow, and then remind them when they need to wash their hands. So that would be after using the restroom, before they eat, after they touch their face or cough or sneeze onto their hands, and after any time they've touched those high touch surfaces that we've talked about previously. But that could include items like doorknobs or handles, toilet lids or handles of the toilet, or any shared tools or equipment. So any of those surfaces where multiple people may be touching, or what we consider those high touch surfaces. So they're going to want to wash their hands when they come into contact with those surfaces. And then I'm going to talk more in detail about those gloves and face coverings in a few slides, but be sure your training includes how to properly use, remove, and dispose of gloves and face coverings. And then to help reduce the transmission of virus, you should schedule disinfection of those high touch surfaces around your operations. Be sure your employees are doing this, who are doing this function are trained on the correct process and use appropriate PPE during those disinfection activities. Next slide. So should you use gloves? We get this question a lot, and so hopefully we will give you some good information to help you determine if you want to use gloves. So one thing to keep in mind is that if you have access to adequate hand washing stations and your employees are being diligent about washing their hands frequently, maybe glove use can be reduced and you can really focus those gloves on those prioritized activities that maybe introduce a little bit more risk. And so, you know, we've heard that there's gloves are not available or maybe difficult to find right now. And so determining when good times to use them is going to really benefit you if you're having a hard time finding them. So again, if those employees are handling payments, you should consider having them wear gloves. It's also recommended that they wear gloves for direct produce handling at the point of sale, where like when they're bagging or boxing product for the customer. Be sure to have multiple sizes available to accommodate all employees who are using the gloves, and then again, providing that training on how to use the gloves. The training should include washing their hands before putting the gloves on and when to change their gloves. Remember, you don't want to contaminate the gloves before putting them on, so train your employees to not blow into the gloves or roll them to make them easier to get on their hands. So be sure that you highlight those things because we see that pretty frequently as well. Next slide. So to help you with education around glove use, we created this best practices for glove use fact sheet. You can use this to train your employees, as well as posting it in areas where employees will be accessing the gloves as that frequent reminder and about the importance of using gloves correctly. Please do not assume that your employees are just going to know how and when to use gloves. We've been on many farms where they're not used correctly, and employees view the gloves as something that means they don't have to follow regular hygiene practices. So be sure that you really communicate, you know, when you want them to use them and how you want them to use them. Next slide. Now we're going to talk a little bit about face coverings and masks. So CDC is recommending that face coverings be used anytime where physical distancing of at least 6 feet cannot be maintained. So this could be when your employees are in a packing area and 6 feet isn't available. There isn't that much room to have 6 feet between your employees. Maybe in your farm stand, potentially riding in vehicles, or maybe when they're in your coolers. You know, so just think about those places where that physical distancing isn't an option. So you need to take into account the safety and well-being of your employees who are using the mask. If it's hot outside or they're doing a highly physical activity, then you should really focus on that social distancing so your employees don't need to wear face coverings that might potentially restrict their airflow or make them get really hot and overheat. So, you know, use really good judgment in recommending and having your employees wear face coverings. We've gotten this question a lot from farmers, and, you know, we want to make sure that your employees are safe. That's the most important thing. And so if you can't, you know, if it is really hot out or they're doing that really physical activity, then look at providing that social distancing for your employees. You can also make face coverings a part of your visitor policy and require them for any visitors. This would be just like anything else you have in your visitor policy. It's just another one of your requirements. If you're going to require them in a market type setting, then you're going to want to make sure that you post that information for customers, both that can be accessed ahead of time. So if they go to your website or they go to your social media, they know that's something that they're going to need to provide when they get there. And then also at the venues, they want to have signage available that says you're requiring or asking people to wear those face coverings. So you want to make sure you communicate that to both your visitors at your farm and also, you know, at your market setting. And then we wanted to let you guys know as well, you might have heard that last week FDA released information to help clarify the use of the various types of face coverings for food and agriculture workers. It discusses when and how to use respirators, disposable face masks, and cloth face coverings. We have the link included here for you to review and determine which is best for the risks and activities in your operation. And so these slides will be available to you after the webinar, and so you'll be able to access that link. And then it's important to be sure that your employees are using these face coverings correctly for both their health as well as for contamination issues. So they should fit snugly but comfortably against the side of the face. They should have straps ties, or ear loops to allow them to be secured to the face. They need to be constructed in a manner that allows for breathing without restriction. You know, it's a really important thing. We hear of lots of various types of multiple layers of cloth that are being put over people's faces and really restricting that airflow, but you want to make sure you can breathe through those things that you're having your employees put on. And most importantly, they need to cover both the nose and the mouth. I can't tell you how many times I see people who are not wearing face coverings correctly. They have them down on their chin and they're just covering their mouths, or they just have it on their upper part of their face, you know, and they're not getting that protection from those face coverings by doing that. And they're certainly not protecting those around them if they're asymptomatic. And then CDC has excellent instructions on different types of face masks that you can make at home. So be sure to visit their website for more information. And again, that's provided there on the slide. Next slide, please. And we also created a graphic, another fact sheet to really help you and your employees use face coverings correctly. Again, you can use this for training. You can also post it around your operation to remind and reinforce the proper use of face coverings. So this is available on our website. And back to you, Martha.
Great. All right. Thank you, Christy. So moving from worker health and hygiene then to looking at those food contact surfaces. So some of this is a review of things that we talked about last week, but we felt like we should clarify for point of sale, you know, why it's important to distinguish between a food contact surface and a non-food contact surface, and how you're going to want to treat them differently. And so a food contact surface, just as it sounds, is one that your product will come into direct contact with. And so that could be tables, bins, a scale if you're weighing produce, any of the packaging that you're using, you know, coolers or other kinds of containers that you might be storing produce in. Because it comes into direct contact with a food product, you can clean and sanitize it. You should just do your regular, you know, cleaning and sanitizing program before and after use. If it turns out that that table is at market, and it's what we're going to talk about as in that third column, a high touch surface, then you may want to treat it differently. But again, if it's a food contact surface, you're not going to be able to disinfect it. You may want to clean and sanitize it more frequently, but we're not going to talk about disinfecting. So sanitizing, you know, is lowering the number of microorganisms, pathogenic microorganisms, or in this case, you know, other potential pathogens. However, it does not destroy them, and it's also using a lower concentration than a disinfecting product would. And so we really want to make that distinction for your non-food contact surfaces. And so that's, you know, anything that you're not going to be placing a food product on or may not touch a food product. You know, those are items where you can clean and disinfect them because you will be touching them, but food will not. And so you can use that higher concentration of a product. And I'll give you some references for that in just a minute. And then the last category, which is really a subset, is high touch surfaces. And you see this a lot because it's become very clear that places where people might touch a surface and then, or touch their mouth, their nose, their face, or whatever, and then touch a surface could be a pathway for viral transmission. So, you know, a very direct pathway. So we're not saying that, you know, SARS-CoV-2 is existing for a long period of time on that surface, but it's like you know, a pass-through in a way. So those are the types of surfaces that CDC is saying they should be cleaned and disinfected frequently. So again, you're going to be using that disinfecting strength of product, and that could be on those areas that you're coming into contact with a lot. So obviously that could be on your payment equipment, on, you know, coolers or bins that you're, you know, moving around a lot. That may, you know, but it would be something that you're having a lot of employee and potential customer contact with. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a more rigorous sanitation program for those, again, because we're really trying to minimize the spread of COVID-19 and reduce pathways for transmission. So think ahead to the surfaces that you're using at your point of sale. Can they actually be cleaned and sanitized? So if your tables are wood, you can clean them, but you're certainly not going to be able to sanitize them adequately because they are porous. But if you've got a non-porous surface, that really makes your sanitation program a lot easier. Here are a few resources for you. The first group of resources at the top shows you some different places where you can source that personal protective equipment. There's some lists of places that are producing hand sanitizer that might be useful. And then, restaurant supply companies have a lot of equipment too, and that's another source as you're looking ahead to having these things on hand and filling out that shopping list. Because you're thinking about the types of chemical products that you might be using. If you're looking at cleaning and sanitizing food contact surfaces, that first hyperlink there is from the Produce Safety Alliance, and that is a list of sanitizers that can be used on food contact surfaces, and also for organic operations or organic producing and handling operations. So that's definitely a good resource. You can check last week's webinar for a little bit more information on that, or follow the link. If you're looking at non-food contact surfaces and disinfecting products, EPA released a list N that they're constantly updating, and so those are all products that are effective against emerging pathogens and against coronaviruses as well as other viruses. So you can check that list, make sure you follow the label, use the correct equipment that you need to use it safely. Don't assume that your face covering is going to be the correct equipment, of course, or your disposable gloves. You may well need something, you're going to need something different for using these types of chemical products. So again, making sure you read the label. Sanitation at the point of sale is, as we're saying, this is going to be really important. And so thinking about the kind of product, how you're going to use it, and then the frequency of using it is going to be your initial strategy. So planning to have, know what surfaces, having a schedule, having the products on hand, making sure your employees are trained to use those products is going to be really important. Any disinfecting wipes, for example, I think they will be really useful in a higher traffic area. Just remember they need to contain at least 70% alcohol. All disinfectants need some contact time with the surface to be able to deactivate pathogens. And so in that case, it's going to need the opportunity to be on the surface for a while, anywhere from 30 seconds and minutes, depending on the product. So you're really going to want to check those labels and make sure that you're using the right product for your situation. I mentioned, a non-porous table. Important to be thinking again about any, any surfaces that you're going to want to be frequently cleaning and sanitizing. You're going to want to make sure it can hold up to that type of cleaning. And then another thing that we know some folks are looking at are, sneeze guards when it's not going to be possible to keep staff and customers 6 feet apart. Sneeze guards can be a really effective thing to use. So the next thing to think about is, handling product. Some of the recommendations that we're seeing at the level of farmers markets is, again, to keep traffic moving and also just to minimize other potential risks, getting people in closer proximity, are not having any product sampling. Making sure that any foods that are, ready to eat foods are to go only, so there aren't foods being consumed in the market. And so it's, kind of continuing to provide that message of, let's be here to do our transactions. Let's be here to support our farmers and ranchers and other vendors. But, it's going to be less of a social venue at this time. Anything you can do to make transactions go more smoothly is going to be helpful. So, having things pre-weighed, pre-measured is going to be really good. Making sure you know what to bring is always an issue at market, but it may be now even more so. If you have a way for people to let you know ahead of time what they're looking for, you can be, you know, kind of queued up to provide that. And again, you know, having some product out for display, but really not encouraging people to come too close to inspect it. Again, just to, unless you have sneeze guards up, to really respect that social distancing. And then a little bit of thinking ahead for how a CSA pickup might work or similar. You know, one thing is thinking about, you know, of course, having shares already be boxed, thinking about, you know, if somebody wants to make a change, how are you going to manage that? You know, if you're going to have swap items or you have add-ons, you know, having that already packaged and ready to go so that you can build out a box, do that trade out quickly. So just thinking ahead and being prepared, making sure that, you know, customers can go get their box and leave. And again, it's, you know, it's, the focus is really on making sure that we are both implementing practices as well as conveying the message that we want everybody to be safe. And so that's really a lot of the thinking behind this is, you know, how can we make our direct to consumer opportunities as safe, if not safer, than, you know, other opportunities that people have to buy their fresh fruits, vegetables, and other products. So again, that's where a lot of these recommendations come from. They're things to think about building in to, you know, to your own points of sales. And Christy, back to you.
All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about packaging materials. So, you know, CDC, FDA, and USDA have all said that food and food packaging do not transmit the virus. However, that doesn't mean we still should not have best practices for their use. And so these are reminders of practices you should be doing. So storing those packaged materials in a place where they cannot become contaminated, up off the floor, away from animals and people, are really just good food safety practices to have. Packaging that customers take home and bring it back to you should only be made of materials that you can clean and sanitize. And again, this is a best practice for food safety in general, not just specific to COVID-19. You really have no idea what those customers are doing with that bag or box or container when they take it home. And so being able to clean and sanitize it when they bring it back to you should be a part of your regular practices. We've heard a lot of rumors about sanitizing the outside of food packaging. You do not need to sanitize or disinfect the finalized packaging of products before giving it to the customers. Those products for cleaning and sanitizing and disinfecting are not made to be put onto food packaging or food. And, you know, they can potentially leak through that product packaging and contaminate the product and make consumers sick. And so you really want to, you know, avoid doing those practices that are going to contaminate your product. Next slide, please. So thinking about, you know, these reusable packaging, you know, we get a lot of questions again about reusable bags. And so, you know, reusable bags that are not cleaned and sanitized are not recommended, you know, ever, but especially at this time. And a lot of grocery stores, as many of you know, have banned their use due to the risks associated with using them. However, if you do decide to use them, you can clean and sanitize them, but as you can see, the process is pretty involved. So for those plastic and nylon bags, you're going to first want to clean both the inside and outside with soapy water, and then you're going to rinse that soapy, dirty water off, and then you're going to want to spray or wipe down both the inside and outside of the bags with diluted bleach or another disinfectant that's approved for use on that material. And then finally, you're going to allow those bags to completely air dry before you stack them up for storage or before you use them again. So that's the process for plastic and nylon. And then for those cloth bags, you can actually wash them in your washing machine with the regular laundry detergent that you use for your other laundry. So you don't need anything specific. You don't even need to wash them in hot water. They're just saying the regular wash cycle is fine for washing them. And then for drying them, you do want to dry them on that warmest setting that the material can withstand. So whatever the highest temperature for the type of cloth that you're using is what you're going to want to dry them for. And so there's a couple links at the bottom there for more information on those reusable bags, and then also the cleaning and disinfecting steps from CDC that is a review of what we just discussed on the slide. Next slide, please. So now we're kind of moving out of the process, you know, we're thinking about payments now. And so we want to think about, you know, some best practices around that. So you really want to make it easy for your customers to see your pricing and what products are available. So that way they can decide what they want and be prepared with the proper payment when they get to the payment section of your stand. I did find some information in advertising for recommendations on like font size or how big to make those letters that people can see from 6 feet away. And so what I found was you want, you know, your font size to be 40 point or your letters or numbers that are 3/8 of an inch high. And so that's the $5 that's there on your slide is an example of what the 40 point looks like. So hopefully that helps provide that that clarification on how big to make it. So whenever possible, you want to try to use a digital method of payment so that way you're not exchanging cash with customers. If you can set it up so the signature is not required, that's even better because that's going to reduce that contact between you and the customers and your equipment. If it's not possible for you to do a digital method of payment and you do, you know, take cash payments, make them an even dollar amount. That way you don't have to give out coins. Also consider having customers just place the cash into some kind of container or cash box. Again, so the staff don't have to handle that money. And then that's going to reduce the number of times they're going to wash their hands and just speed your process along in case you're busy there at your stand. And then another consideration is that if you have enough staff to just have one person take payments and make change, that's a really good practice. Again, have this person wear gloves and wash their hands when those gloves and change those gloves when they become contaminated. And so just having that one person assigned to do that task can really speed along your customers and allow other staff to select, to focus on selecting and bagging that produce. Next slide. So now we're about to the end of the in-depth information that we're going to give you. We're going to provide a bunch of resources on the next several slides, but we thought we would provide some highlights since we covered quite a bit today. And so, you know, be prepared to provide an increased number of those well-stocked hand washing stations and hand sanitizer stations. Think about your communication. You know, it's really important that your employees know what your processes are and expectations that you have of them, and make sure you train them on your health and hygiene practices, any cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting activities, and what the processes you have for managing your farm stand. So you really want to do a good job of training and communicating your employees on those practices. And then communication with your customers is also really important. You want them to be prepared to visit your operation. So provide information on how they can order from you, your visitor policy if you have one, and what the pickup protocol is going to be. So that way when they come to your operation, they know what to expect and can be prepared. Signage for both employees and customers was really going to help and reinforce your expectations. So, you know, we provided a lot of resources. There's a lot of resources out there. So, you know, order or print, if you're going to print it at home, and post that signage all around your operation. That's going to help your customers understand how to visit your farm or farm stands. You can provide information on like the directional signage that Martha mentioned earlier, so where they can and can't go, you know, what the payment options are, physical distancing, so all that stuff. Providing all of that signage is really going to help them understand and know, you know, what your processes are at your venue. And so finally, we really want to emphasize that you should continue all of your routine food safety practices during this COVID-19 and any time throughout the year. It doesn't matter what environment we're in. It's really important to continue that stuff. So that would include your cleaning and sanitizing, any record keeping you normally do for your farm. You know, there's not any new regulations associated with COVID-19, and our recommendations today are really focused to help prevent the transmission of the virus. So keep up all the good work you guys normally do with your food safety practices. Next slide. So we have put together some communication tools and strategies you can use with your customers. You know, we have a graphic card that's available as a PDF, you know, that you can post on your website somewhere with links to the FDA, USDA, CDC websites that provide more information on, you know, what customers can do to safely handle, you know, produce. We have a fresh produce frequently asked questions, and that was put together to really dispel some of these myths around and rumors around, you know, handling produce. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, we put together a food safety practices template that you can post at your farm. You can put on your website. It has a section for, you know, what you're doing on your farm to protect your customers, and then what also, you know, your customers can do to protect you. And so that's available on our website for you to download and modify to include any practices that you're doing on your farm. Next slide. And then you guys may have seen these before. You know, we put together some physical distancing communication graphics that you can use. You know, so there's one that's, you know, physical distancing for everyone. So I thought, you know, this is a really good way to describe it to people. You know, if you can touch hands, you're too close to each other. And then we have some for farm workers just to make it relevant to them, you know, keep that distance between you. So these are available to download from our website as well. Next slide. So the Colorado Farmers Market Association put together some guidelines that help with the setup and operation of farmers markets during COVID-19. A lot of the information we presented today is in that document, but it can be a good resource document for you to download, and they just made it available. So Martha has included the link on the slide for you to access that file. And then FDA put together a graphic that I found really interesting and, you know, a good option for retail food stores, but it has and food pickup and delivery services, but it has a lot of overlay with our industry, with the produce industry as well. And so I think those are also good resources for you as you're developing your processes, as you're training your employees, you know, just things to read over and you know, potentially include in your operations as well. Next slide, please. And so we have one final slide on some educational resources. So again, we put together some graphics to help dispel those rumors about, you know, cleaning and sanitizing your actual produce before you eat it. And so, you know, we want to do everything we can to educate customers not to do that and consumers not to do that, you know, because those cleaning and sanitizing agents are really dangerous to consume. And so we put together a graphic and also a fact sheet that has more information. And then the final thing, the green sticker on the right-hand side of the slide, that's just an abbreviated version of that other graphic that you could potentially print as a sticker. And again, it just has those good food safety handling practices for fresh produce. And so it can be a good way to educate your customers that way as well. Next slide. So hopefully everybody's been to our website at this point, but if you haven't, we do have a new tab, a COVID-19 tab, and so we have a ton of resources on that website that are available for you to help you during this time and help you establish processes and do education and training of your employees. And so please, we really encourage you to visit that site. It's at www.coproducesafety.org. And so go there, look for the COVID-19 tab, and if you don't find what you're looking for, please reach out to myself or Martha, and we will work to find that resource available for you. Next slide. So there's a lot of information out there for farmers. You know, we have a lot of really good information on our website, and then we provide some additional resources that have reliable information for you. And so our goal with this is really to help you have that information that you can feel confident in and that is accurate and isn't part of rumors or part of myths or stuff that's gonna recommendations that may endanger your customers. And so we encourage you to visit these sites from CDC, USDA, FDA, our Colorado Public Health and Environment. Those are all really good resources to go to for more information. Last slide. So thank you all again for participating in our webinar today. We really appreciate your attendance. We hope we've given you some good strategies for your various points of sale. Here's our contact information. If you have questions after the webinar, or if you'd like to discuss something specific about your farm or your operation or your point of sale venue further, please just reach out to Martha or myself. Back to you, Martha.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for hanging in there. And I think just one point of clarification, we talked about this a lot last week, but Ann Zander reminded us that we always need to emphasize the fact that before using a sanitizer or a disinfectant, you do need to clean that surface. And so cleaning is removing all of the visible debris, organic material, whatever the soil is, and that otherwise your sanitizing or disinfecting step will not be effective because it'll just be impeded by the fact that we've got this other material on the surface. So cleaning always comes before sanitizing or disinfecting. So are there other questions that we can answer? We're happy to stay on the line and answer any other questions.
While we're looking for those to come in, I want to launch a poll and see what our educational outcomes were. Let us know, did you learn something new today, and will you use the information that you learned? And while we're checking to see if you have more questions, I want to thank you for coming, and as your host, let you know that this recording will be posted to coloradoproduce.org, its COVID-19 page, and to the freshproduce.colostate.edu COVID-19 page. We'll have closed captioning on the recording, and Martha and Christy, I understand, will be able to make a PDF of the slides and post it on the website as well.
Yep. Yeah, that'll allow folks to access all those links that we put in. So the links will all be active in the PDF.
Great, everybody. Thanks for your responses in the poll. Glad to see everybody learn something new today and going to put that information to work. So appreciate all your support in today's webinar, coming and participating. If you have other ideas for us of places where we can fill in some gaps in information or resources for you in response to COVID-19, please feel free to chime in to any three of us. And appreciate you being here, and have a great day.
Great. Thanks, everybody.